And welcome, Standard Fantasy Football Podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We got some late breaking NFL news today and wanted to jump on and give you our thoughts about two big deals that happened, but especially one new landing spot for a premier player. DeAndre Hopkins signing with the Tennessee Titans on a 2-year deal worth $26 million with an additional $6 million in incentives over the course of the contract. Huge news. We kind of knew it was going to come. They said they had the strongest option to get him. They gave him the first visit. They gave him a contract, and I think he was trying to wait it out. But I think he's ready to play, and he wants to go get down to business and do what he does best. He at least has a good running game. It's a team that can fight for the playoffs again this year, obviously. And he has his former defensive coordinator from the Texans while he was playing at the Texans there, so a little familiarity with Mike Vrabel. I just think this is a best scenario fit for him for the options that were out there besides going to Kansas City. But between the two teams that looked like it was going to be the biggest chance to go to, Patriots, Titans, I like it for fantasy in the Titans way more than I like the Patriots. And honestly, I think he has an opportunity to stand out better, and he's in a place where he's got a quarterback that he could also trust pretty well and a little bit more, because who else is he going to throw to besides Treylon Burks? So I don't know. Give me your thoughts. What do you think?
I mean, I was never excited about either one of these teams for him. I thought he could end up in a better spot with a better quarterback, with a better chance to win playoff games or to win a championship. Like, I don't think either one of these teams is a championship contender. Like, maybe the Titans make the playoffs there. But with the emerging stars in Jacksonville, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. And I definitely didn't like him going to the Patriots. I think the Patriots might have been a better fit for him if we're talking about just those two teams.
Yeah, and those are the strongest two teams going from. Obviously, you saw tweets about the Bills saying, we'll take you if you want to go ring hunting. The Chiefs obviously had strong interest in him, but at the end of the day,
it came down to it. We talked about this when we first did, the report weeks ago when he was released, and what teams would fit well, what he was kind of looking for, and I said this. I don't think he wanted a 1-year deal. And so a lot of these teams that everyone speculated him going to, and Baltimore and Kansas City and Buffalo, I think really what it comes down to is they weren't going to offer him anything but a 1-year deal. And he ends up getting a 2-year deal. He ends up getting around $13 million. If he hits any kind of incentives, he's going to be averaging around $16 million. So it's a good scenario for him. He gets 2 years under his belt and gets to kind of showcase. I think it's best of both scenarios for him. It's another elite receiver that goes to Tennessee late in their career that I just think is going to wash. You saw Julio Jones do it. We saw Andre Johnson do it. We saw Randy Moss do it. And I just don't see. I can't see this offense he's going to be the best pass catcher there. Yeah, it's they desperately needed a wide receiver one to step in, but do we really trust Ryan Tannehill to get him the volume that we want him to get, that we've seen him get in the past? He's not Kyler Murray and he's not Deshaun Watson, but he sure as hell isn't either one of those teams. Like, this team is not either one of those teams where they were pass heavy in their offense. Like, this is the Derrick Henry show. So, yeah, I think it frees up more. Maybe his efficiency goes up. And, yeah, he can catch everything that's thrown to him. So it helps out Tannehill. But in terms of fantasy, I can't really get super excited about this. I think he, in terms of fantasy value, him landing here kind of drops it for me a little bit. And not by much, because it's still DeAndre Hopkins, but this isn't a great. I wasn't excited about anyone on the receiving core, and I'm not really excited about DHop being on this receiving core.
Well, here's the big thing to me, and I think bad things come in threes, like they say. I think DHop can break this sort of quote-unquote Madden curse that the Titans are carrying with these big-time wide receivers towards the end of their careers.
You sure about that?
I'm just saying I think so.
You sure
here, let me just throw some numbers at you about Tannehill. I think Tannehill is sneaky in terms of what his passing volume has been and his production has been. He's had 2 4,000-yard seasons in Miami. Besides last year where he only played 12 games, he had 2 back-to-back seasons of 3,700 yards or more. He had one season with 33 passing touchdowns and the next one with 21. There's a very good chance, and that was 2020, by the way. There's a very good chance to me, and that was what A.J. Brown, to get, maybe he's not as youthful as A.J. Brown Hopkins is, but you've got another premier wide receiver that's coming to Tannehill here that can produce, if he throws for 36 to 30 to 4,000 yards, say he throws for 3,800, he throws for another 25, 26 touchdowns. I think Hopkins is going to be on the positive receiving end of those statistics and allows him to be, maybe he's not going to be his premier top 7 wide receiver stats that we've seen him in the past. But that being said, if you're getting him in late 3rd round, 4th round value for Hopkins, a wide receiver 1, he has a chance to go for like 1,100 and 6-7 touchdowns on a season, which is
that's so hopeful. That's so hopeful.
But how's it hopeful for a guy who's always healthy? Like, he barely has missed time in his career in terms of Hopkins, and he's a guaranteed put the ball anywhere near him, catch the ball guy. He's got freakish
I'm not worried
hands.
About the injury I'm not worried about his ACL that he had 2 years ago because he got suspended. He's coming off of it. His injury risk, it doesn't concern me. It's really hopeful thinking to think that Tannehill is going to throw for 35 to 3,800 yards.
But he would have done it again last year. Last year he played 12 games for 2,500 yards. He would have threw for at least 3,500 yards again last year.
Maybe. I think he's more in the 3,000 to 3,500 yard, not in the 35 to 38. I don't think every single season he's played a full. He's only had one season that he had played a full 16 to 17 games, where it was 3,200 yards, and that was his first year in Miami in 2012. Besides that, every time he's played a full season, he's thrown for at least 3,700 yards. Yeah, this is what I will say.
I mean, the numbers don't lie when it comes to that. I'm talking about both Miami and Tennessee, but especially in Tennessee.
I think Tannehill's I'm not knocking Tannehill. I think he's an efficient game manager. Like, I don't think he's going to go out there and blow people up for huge games. And I don't think that a lot of the touchdown numbers. I don't think we can. Will they go up from last year? Yeah, but like I don't see him throwing for 30 plus touchdowns either. Like, think about when he had A.J. Brown and a young A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown and DHop are 2 way different receivers. I don't think that A.J. Brown is necessarily better than a prime DHop. But he is that downfield physical.
So youth is on his side, yeah.
Yeah, and he's just a huge mismatch downfield when you get him one-on-one. And we saw a lot the year that A.J. Brown really broke out was that he was winning those 50-50 battles on seam routes and deep posts. And D-Hop's going to get open. D-Hop's going to make people miss. I don't see the touchdowns being there. I can see him getting around 1,000 yards. I don't really see him doing too much over that. And then touchdown numbers is going to go down. I can't see him really breaking 7 touchdowns, which, like, listen, if you're going to get a guy like him, that's great. I think 3rd round is a little bit too rich for me to go and get D-Hop. I think that if he's at the end of the 4th round, that's kind of where I'd be willing to take him. What I will say on the D-Hop move is, we talked all offseason so far about how we're just fading all the pass catchers here. We're going to see Treylon Burks' stock just absolutely plummet now. And that's great because that, I think, is going to help him. I think that having D-Hop on one side is going to make him, he's the number 2 there. And you could probably go get him now in the 9th or 10th, 11th round. And that's great. I would absolutely go take him there. That's great value for him. I don't know. I think a lot of the offseason buzz, especially around Chig at tight end, I can't see 3 viable pass catchers there in that offense. So
I agree with you 100%. But here's the thing I will say about that. I'm going to back up that comment with the fact that Tannehill and the Titans have never had 2,000-yard receivers together. The closest they had actually was pretty close in 2020 with Corey Davis and A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown, 75 yards over 1,000, and Corey Davis was only 16 yards shy of 1,000. But Corey Davis still had 5 touchdowns that year. as a wide receiver 2 on that team. A.J. Brown had 11. And then here's the big thing. Jonnu Smith, 8 touchdowns. So the point I want to make about Chig is I think Chig you can take away from this, not saying that it's going to hurt him. I think it's going to hurt him overall because I think everybody thought Chig would be the number 2 option there, which it was going to be. However, I still think Chig's going to have a viable red zone opportunity with the Titans here and could see Jonnu Smith type numbers where he maybe ends up with 500-600 yards and 6-7 touchdowns. But
yeah, I mean, he's going to be ultra efficient and be a touchdown monster.
Well, and that's why people are high on him, because that's his numbers right now. His big time numbers and efficiency from a small sample size are actually pretty good. However, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, when you extrapolate like 4 games out of his entire season last year.
Correct. But still,
not accounting for the 6 games that he had 1 or fewer targets. That's my concern about Tennessee is like if they're only throwing the ball 25 times a game, how can you love 3 different pass catchers there in that offense? Especially if one of them is DHop, who's going to get. I'm not saying you. I'm just speaking out to our audience. Is that how can you actually love 3 viable pass catchers when one of them is DHop, who's going to be commanding around 9 targets per game? And we'll go over some stats that we talked about right before we got on camera about the numbers that DHop has had outside of games with Kyler Murray and Deshaun Watson with backup quarterbacks, who we're not saying that Tannehill's a backup quarterback, but he sure as heck ain't the thrower that Watson and Murray is.
Correct.
So if 9 or 10 targets a game are going towards DHop and they're only throwing the ball 25 times, I mean, I don't see another pathway for these guys to be, unless they're extremely, extremely efficient when they do catch the ball. And I just don't see it from those guys. So I'm going to say like the stock on Chig and the stock on Traylon Burks are going to drop. And I like that for Burks. I didn't like Chig to begin with. Even though, I've talked on and said he's the Alberto of this year, or there's all this offseason hype about him, and I don't see it. I don't see the same pathway to success. There's so many other tight ends there that I like. But I really do see, if DHop is anything, he's going to be volume based, and that is good enough to be a top 4 round pick. For me, it's more the back end of the 4th round or the middle of the 4th round for me. I wouldn't personally take him in the 3rd round. I think there's other guys there that I would absolutely want to grab. Like, I'd rather have Devonta Smith over him. I'd rather have T. Higgins over him.
Yeah, well, you're talking about early 3rd round there too. I mean, well, I'm talking late 3rd round in terms of that. But yeah, I honestly, if I'm sitting at the swing of the 3rd, 4th round, that's where I'd be probably thinking about taking him, because he's obviously not going to come back to you if you really like him and want him. If you're taking him as a wide receiver 2, if you're taking him as a wide receiver 1, again, I'd rather look for somebody with a little bit more upside on a team that's pass heavy. However, I mean, let's jump into the numbers that you were kind of alluding to, but I want to talk about Chig real quick. And that's the fact that what everybody's hyped up on is he had 14 yards per reception last year. He had 9.7 yards per target. He had some massive yards per reception numbers. It would be like 1 catch for 31, 1 for 41, 1 for 48. But he did have like 4 for 68. So he has some big chunk play ability, which is nice. But again, it hurt. I think Traylon Burks takes the biggest hit here. I think Chig is still going to be an option because he creates a mismatch. So he's probably going to have more opportunity to get open. And again, like you said, it's a volume play for DHop. And if you're going volume to DHop and you're only throwing the ball, 24 to 27 times a game, there's not a lot of mouths to feed after that when you eat up 10 targets, 9 targets to Hopkins each game. The beauty of Hopkins is he catches almost everything, as long as you have somebody who could throw the ball relatively close to around him. And that being
best catch radius in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he's got freakishly Titan size hands, so pun intended. Let's just talk about the numbers you were talking about. Without Kyler Murray and without Deshaun Watson, he averaged 9 targets a game. He averaged 7 receptions a game and 66 yards a game. He had no touchdowns, and that happened to only be last year for 5 weeks with Colt McCoy. So it's a small sample size, so to speak, and we're not going to go back past 2017 when he was before Deshaun Watson came into the league, because that's young, youthful DeAndre Hopkins. Let's take a sample size closer up. So last year, those 5 weeks, it wasn't promising. He ended up with 58 targets. He had 34 receptions. He had one horrible game where he had 10 targets and 1 catch. That was brutal. 332 yards and no touchdowns. So it's not a promising number, but again, we're saying Tannehill is not backup quality quarterback here, also not premier quarterback. So we'll see if the Titans decide to run Derrick Henry into the ground and that passing volume continues to be low, or now that they have somebody like A.J. Brown, maybe we can look back to 2020 and 2021 where Tannehill threw for 357 completions on 531 attempts in 2021. He had 481 attempts. So you could hope for that 500 number if you want to see big numbers from DHop. But if you're under 500, you're not going to see the volume you're looking for out of your number one receiver if that's where you take him. So we talked about Chig, but let's talk, Treylon Burks real quick. We said his stock's going to plummet. I think Burks to me was even an iffy pick to begin with. It was more of a shoot your shot with him because he was the only guy there, and he's either going to sink or swim type scenario for him. So if he was going to play well, it was going to be this year. Otherwise, he's going to find himself out of a job. So again, to me, he might benefit off of not getting top coverage, but he didn't have top coverage last year, at all times. And he had some big games too, and he had some really bad games too. So I don't like the inconsistency there. And like we said, if the targets aren't going to be there during the games based on passing volume, you're not going to rely on him as a wide receiver 2-3 option. That's a flex play if you need him. It's a stasher too if they decide to pass more, but I just don't see it happening.
Like I said, the volume is just not there for this offense in the passing game. I alluded to before is, because his stock is dropping, you're not gonna invest very much into him. You're not gonna have to go and get him in the 6th, 7th, 8th round if you want him. Like, he's gonna be available there in the 10th round.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, if you want to go and take a flyer on him, he's going to be the number 2 there. If we thought he was going to be the number 1 before DHop was there, he's going to be the number 2, and now you have DHop on the other side. DHop's going to command coverage.
I don't think he'll be the number 2 there. I think Chig may command more of a target share based on mismatches. At the end of the season, Treylon's going to have probably more targets and more receptions than Chig. I just think it's going to be not a large big jump between the two in terms of yardage and touchdowns. I think Treylon Burks is great. I liked him coming out of college. They obviously traded for him, A.J. Brown to go get him. I'm not in love with the way the guy played his rookie season. He's got to show me something different.
Yeah, he definitely needs to prove himself this year. That's goes without a doubt. I still like the value there if he's dropping down. That's kind of where I wanted to go and get him anyway, as even a number 1 is kind of in the 9th or 10th round. And now if I'm able to go get him there, what's the worst? That's in that guy. He might be a guy that I'm not afraid to cut in the first week of waiver wires, the first couple of weeks of waiver wires. So I don't know. I wasn't in love with this. This was one of the teams that we talked about, us avoiding pretty much that entire offense. And just because they got DHop, it doesn't really change much for me. It's Henry, and that's really.
Well, here's the question. Let's talk about ADP with Treylon Burks. Yet right now, ADP 118. So right before the start of that 10th round, you got Alan Lazard, you got Beckham in the 10th round. This is with 12 team, by the way. You got Jacoby Myers, Adam Thielen,
Flowers, probably.
You've got Tyler Boyd, Darnell Mooney. Yeah. Wouldn't you rather have somebody like Thielen or rather have somebody like?
Oh, I'd probably take any one of those guys over him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's I think his stock's going to drop further down past those guys. He's not going to have his name around them. I think you should be able to get him down further than that. He's above them right now, obviously, because he was supposed to be number 1.
He's if he was projected to go in the 10th round now, you might be able to get him for free. He might go undrafted, or be able to.
Well,
get
he
him
was
in the
he was projected ADP 79. So we're talking literally way earlier than the
Right.
10th round. So
Right.
I think he'll drop probably to the 10th round, but I like the guys that are around there. To me, he's dropped himself further than that just because the value of the other guys around him there. Well, let's finish off today's quick short episode with Evan Engram. The other news coming out: Evan Engram did not sign his franchise tag. Didn't need to. He cut a deal with the Jacksonville Jaguars, 3-year, $41.25 million contract with $24 million guaranteed. Huge contract. Love it. As a Giants fan, I did like this guy. I don't think the drop balls were his fault. I think it was a Daniel Jones not being able to throw a good touch ball in short yardage situations. That being said, he proved last year in Jacksonville he can still catch, he can still run, he can still create a mismatch because he's a freak athlete at 6'3", 240. Now we got Darren Waller as a Giants fan, and the contract is quite similar. I think they're going to end up paying him a little bit less than Engram. Would have been nice to keep a Giants guy for life. But that being said, I'm happy for him. I think it's a great situation. The team is better off with him there. I didn't think he was going to hold out for the season. I think he would have signed his franchise tag to play.
He's come out
but
and said that he was just going to show up to a training camp without signing the franchise tag anyway. But I mean, let's, in terms of fantasy perspective, I know we've talked a lot about Trevor Lawrence kind of taking a big step this year. And if he's going to do that, he's going to need pass catchers. And it's not just Calvin Ridley. I think having Calvin Ridley and having Christian Kirk there is great. But having a pass-catching, athletic tight end that can do things with the ball in his hands is a key to that success. He's going to be a safety valve for Lawrence. This is a great signing. You know, I loved him last year, late in the season. You know, he had some ups and downs, but he finished the season as a tight end 6. I mean, he went through like a 4-week span where I think was like tight end 1, tight end 3, tight end 4, and then an outlier there where he was like tight end 11 in that 4-week span. Outside of that, he had some down games, but I mean that's the tight end position. What do you want us to say? Like, you know, that's every single tight end, with the exclusion of Kels, who's only doing that about twice or 3 times a season. But it's a great signing. I think, again, if Lawrence is going to make the jump this year, Engram needed to be there. They needed to have a pass catching tight end that can be effective with the ball in his hands after the catch. And they got one.
Yeah. And I think the big thing for me with him is the fact that you look at one stat that jumps off the paper to me, and that's his yards per reception. All but his last year with the Giants in 2021, he is over 10 yards per reception. That man catches a first down every single time the ball is given to him. And that's not because of his downfield threat that he has because of the mismatch against linebackers. But it's the fact that he does have the speed of a wide receiver in a large man's body. So when he catches that ball, you saw a lot with the Jaguars. They would get these 3-yard outs or cross-field catch coming across,
drag route.
Right, a drag route, and all of a sudden he's taking it up the sideline for 20 yards. Yeah. So I think you're going to see a lot more underneath because you've got Christian Kirk in the slot that has deep threat ability. You've got Calvin Ridley who could run any route you give him and has the ability to stretch the field as well. And you're going to have somebody underneath that's going to be a mismatch. You put him over the middle with a linebacker, there's very few out there that are going to have the athleticism to keep up with him. You know, very few.
Too, out of the backfield too.
Yeah.
This team, I mean, the signing was great. We expected him to be there. The news today was that he did sign that 3-year deal. But this is great news for the Jaguars, and I think that this offense is one of those sneaky offenses. I wish DHop would have went there, honestly. I really do.
I just didn't see it happen with the Ridley trade, obviously. But hey,
Ridley on one side, DHop on the other. Throw Christian Kirk in his natural position in the slot. It would have been fantastic.
I think Christian Kirk is still going to see over 60% of his snaps.
Just don't sign the paper. Like, I know that's expected. Like, just don't sign the paper. Go to Jacksonville.
Well, here's the thing. Evan Engram, I think, is going to be a great tight end option, but he falls right into that group of tight ends that cluster together after that big drop off of the top guys. That being said, if you miss out on top guys, you could take a chance in this, hoping that you get Lawrence throwing for 4,500 yards and having a great season. There's going to be tight ends too to take further down, but you see the numbers they're investing in this guy. $41.25 million. They're going to get him the ball. That's the one thing when you put money where the hands are, and I think this is one of those situations where you're going to see that big time. Yeah, same thing with Christian Kirk.
Yeah, Engram, and people said that about Christian Kirk last year. They're like, what are they paying Christian Kirk all this money for? Well, look at what he did last year. That's why they're paying him that kind of money. And so, Engram is going to be worth it. Barring any outside injury or anything that else happens. Like, he's going to finish as a top 10 tight end this year. And like you said, after those first 3-4 guys, there's a huge drop off, and the rest of the guys are clustered together. But he's a guy that end of season is going to finish in that top 10. And you guys all know my strategy: draft 2 of those other tight end guys. So draft Evan Engram and go get Dalton Schultz too. Like, go grab 2 of the next 5. It'll be worth it.
Well, here's my thought with Engram. I mean, he may finish top 10. We talk about that right now. To me, his ceiling is limited. I don't think he has a chance to finish. It's going to be tough for him to finish top 5 with Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley ahead of him. That being said, it's not impossible to do because he's very efficient and he's got big catchability. But I don't know if you're going to see those games like we saw in week 13 and 14 where he had 15 targets, 10 targets. Week 5, 10 targets. I think you're going to see him closer to him having these 7 targets, 6 target average throughout the season, which is still very good for a tight end 1 position. It's still good to finish top 10. I just think you get limited to finish top 5 because those other guys are going to probably average 8 to 10 targets every single weekend.
Sure. You're not going to have like a ton of upside where he's going to finish in the top 10. You look at Darren Waller, and a guy that's probably going to finish maybe 40 points ahead of him. In terms of fantasy stats, and Darren Waller is probably going to go 3-4 rounds ahead of Engram. So fine, I don't care. Take 40 points more. I'm going to get Engram in the 9th or 10th round. I don't care. You go get Waller in the 6th. Go ahead. There's not a big difference between those guys, and for a 4-round difference, where I'm able to go and draft other bench spots or my wide receiver 3s, and heck, I can go draft an elite defense. I don't care.
See, to me, I feel like there's a difference between those guys, and I'll say just because Darren Waller's going to probably be playing the wide receiver 1 role for the New York Giants. So target share. No, but I'm just saying, sitting there looking at it, and we're talking about on paper because that's all we can talk about right now. We haven't even seen any preseason games. We haven't even talked about coming out of camp. But on paper, he is the best receiver on that team, healthy receiver on that team too at that. And so I think at the end of the day, the target share is going to be more in favor of Waller, giving him a higher ceiling opportunity because the two guys are very similar, very big, fast, athletic people that take mismatches and can run with it big time. Now, I mean, Engram was amazing last year. He showed off that he can have multiple 100-yard games. I think he ended up having 200-yard games or 300-yard games. I know he's in his playoff game. He came close to that. So I think, in my opinion, Waller has a step above. So you're drafting Waller at a ceiling, but you can draft Engram a little bit later on for his floor and be very happy with it. I think that's the difference. I think Waller's floor can drop out underneath him just specifically due to injury and stuff, but his ceiling is definitely higher, and you're drafting him for his ceiling. I mean, that's what you're going to hope for. So that's the only thing I have to say about it is I think there is a difference between them because I just think Waller's going to have more target share. Waller's going to have more opportunities for big plays. But again, I'd be happy with Engram on my team. I mean, listen, I finished the season off with him last year. I was very happy with it.
What are the chances that Bellinger outperforms Darren Waller? You think
Dude,
0?
One of the things I was looking at too, and side note, everybody, is Bellinger was playing a lot of fullback last year too, and catching passes out the backfield there. It's a sneaky play. I don't think he's going to get the volume that Waller gets, but there's going to be situations where Waller's lining up in the slot or Waller's lining up out wide and Bellinger's on the field too. So he may get the benefit of getting more opportunity for that, but you don't pay Waller what you're paying him in a trade.
I'm just throwing that out into the ether for you.
I think Bellinger's a fantastic tight end. That's why I was surprised we even got Waller. But anyway, everybody,
that's the news for today. We just wanted to kind of break that out and kind of give you our reaction to at least with these two players and their teammates. What we kind of think is the outlook for them this fantasy season.
Yeah, tune in on Friday of this week for our next episode, and you should leave in the comments your thoughts on the DHop trade or the DHop signing, and let us know what your thoughts of where you would take him, what you think his finish is going to be. Love to hear it and love to see where people are. Again, keep an eye out for episode Friday, and keep an eye out next month for our rankings, where you'll see where we put DHop, so you can get ready for your fantasy drafts. Thanks for tuning in.
Like and subscribe.
And hit that notification button.